Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm writing proc report. Data is equal to SAS help data class. Run. I'm writing proc means data is equal to SAS help dot class. Semicolon run. I'm writing proc frequency. Data is equal to SAS help dot class. Semicolon run. I'm writing proc univariate. Data is equal to SAS help dot class. Now, if I execute the program, I will get the report for class dataset, means processor for the class dataset, frequency processor for the class dataset, and a univariate processor for again the class dataset. Now I did this analysis. After some time, I want to have this analysis for SAS help data by dataset, or I want to have analysis for SAS help dot cost dataset. If you want to have analysis for the SAS help dot cost, tell me what should I do? I need to change the data is equal to again SAS help dot cost. Again, I need to change proc means data is equal to SAS help dot cost. Again, here also I should change the data set. And here also I should change the data set name. How many places I should make change? 4 places. Just imagine I have 500 lines of program. In the 500 lines, I need to change the dataset name from the SAS help dot class into SAS help dot cost at 10 different places. What should I do? I should go to the code and I should scroll it down and scroll it up, and I need to check, I need to replace SAS help dot class with the cars. It is going to take a lot of time for me. It is not so easy to make changes. Now, by using macros, we can make this simple. In macros, by using macros, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a macro variable. I will tell you later what is a macro variable and how to create those macro variables. First, I'm creating a macro variable now. To create a macro variable, I'm writing now percentage let macro variable name. I want to have macro variable name PSN, which means a dataset name, is equal to, I am writing SAS help dot class. If I execute the program, we are going to have a macro variable called DSN, and in that, the DSN value is going to be SAS help dot class. SAS help dot class. Now, in the program, wherever I want to have a SAS help dot class, now instead of writing a SAS help dot class, I will replace that one with ampersand DSN. Remember, the new special character I'm using, ampersand DSN. Now again, proc means data is equal to, I'm writing ampersand DSN. Again, proc frequency, data is equal to, I'm writing, sorry, I'm writing ampersand TSL. Again, proc univariate data is equal to, I am writing ampersand TSL. Now, if I execute this statement one time, now if I execute all these four programs, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to have analysis for, proc report for SAS class, and then I will get the means procedure for SAS class, then I will get the mean frequency procedure for SAS class, and again I will get a univariate procedure for SAS class. Okay. Now I want to change. Now I want to have for SAS cars. Now you need to go to that program and you need to change everywhere. Simply what I will do, I will let the macro variable name is equal to, I am going to change as an SAS cars. Now if I execute this one statement now after that, if I execute all these four statements, what is going to happen now? Now it is going to become SAS help.cars. I am going to have analysis for SAS help.cars like this one. Now we have a unit processor result here. We have a frequency processor result here. Here we have a univariate results for each numerical variable. Then we are going to have a proc report. We are going to have a proc frequency, and we are going to have a proc means processor result. Now again, if you want to change the data set, again from SAS help.cars into maybe, say for example, SAS help.fish or something. Now what we should do, now I'm going to write, SAS help.fish. Now, if I execute this one line, now after that, if I execute all these four programs, now what we are going to have now, we are going to have information, the same thing for like, all the data sets. All these processes is going to get run again for SAS help data, fish data set. Understand this one? So now the code is going to become simplified. It's going to save a lot of time. And this is called a macro variable, and the value of this macro variable is SAS.fish. Now, by seeing this example, how we can define a macro? Again, now for example, see, I want to print the report. Now I'm printing the report, I'm writing a title. Say for example, the title I'm writing as an A. Say for example, this report is generated by, I am writing ampersand name. I will write first of all, generated by Srinivas. Now, again here I'm writing, title. I'm writing this statistical analysis. Run by Srinivas. And keep a semicolon. Again, I'm writing the third title. This, for example, frequency, counts, and percentages are generated by Srinivas. And I'm writing one more title here. I'm writing this. If I execute the program, yes, I'm going to get this information for a SAS help.fish, and at the same time, everywhere I'm going to get.
Sir, second title RUM.
You can write anything. Now, if I execute the program, yes, I'm going to get, for all the four reports in the output window and results we have written down. And when I'm doing that one, obviously I'm going to get the titles for each one. And in the title, we are going to get the my name. Can you see this one? Here we have a name, and every time we are going to have the name. But suddenly, I went to some other company, and you came in my position, and these are the reports you need to generate every day. But when you're generating, you should get your name. But I developed this code, so everywhere I kept my name, but you need to change your name. If you want to change your name again, how many places you should make change? we should change in 4 different places. Just imagine in the real time, we have the same name, 20 different positions. We need to change all the 20 additions. Now, in that scenario, what I'm going to do, I am not going to write the name here. What I am going to write a macro variable. First of all, I'm going to create a macro variable. I'm writing percentage letter, say for example, our programmer, PRGMER is equal to, I am writing the Srinivas. Now, whenever I want to have my name, instead of writing Srinivas, what I'm going to do, I am going to specify, ampersand PRGMER. Now, what I'm going to do from now onwards, so whenever we require the programmer name, instead of writing the programmer name, I am going to specify my macro variable name. Okay, now say if I execute this program, I am going to have analysis for SAS.fish, and everywhere I am going to have my name Srinivas as the programmer name. But now suddenly you came and we need to have your name. So I want to have, instead of Srinivas, I want to have the Sampath. Then what I should do? Now I'm going to change macro variable value PRGMER as an Sampath. Now if I change this one time, now if I execute the program, to execute all these programs, now what is going to happen? Whenever we have a macro variable called ampersand PRGMER, can you say what we are going to get? We are going to get a Sampath. Every time we are going to have Sampath like this. So if you make change in one place, the same change is going to resonate, reverberate, or echo throughout the program. Then based on this, how we can explain, how we can define a macro. You can define such a way that, if you ask me, define macro in one sentence. A macro is a text replacement. Now, whenever you want to enter the text, instead of writing the lengthy text, what I'm going to do, I am going to assign a macro variable to the text. So whenever I want to have a Sampath, what I'm going to do, I'm going to assign the Sampath value to a macro variable. Now I'm going to write the same macro variable throughout my program. When I execute the program, when the macro variable got resolved, in that position, what value I'm going to get? I'm going to get a value called Sampath. So if I replace Sampath with, say, for example, a ROM or something. Now, if I execute this one line now, from now onwards, in the program, wherever we have an ampersand PRGMER, how it is going to get resolved now? This is going to result as a PRGMER. So we can define a macro in a single statement. We can say it as a macro is a text replacement. Okay, so for example, anytime, every time I want to have ROM from, say for example, HYD India. Now every time I cannot run ROM from Hyderabad India. If I write like this one, okay, but again after a few days I want to change that from ROM from Hyderabad into some other name. If you want to make changes, every time I should go to the program and you should make changes. That is not so helpful. It is so much a time-taking process. So I will create a macro variable to the text. Now, whenever I want to use the text, instead of the text, I am going to use my macro variable. So in future, when I execute this macro variable is going to get resolved as this text. Now it will print this text. Understand this one? So this is the second very important application of the macro. So by doing this one, if you understand these both the concepts, 80% of the macros is over. Now, you know how to write a small piece of code in macro. And again, tell me how to write a macro code to sort a data set. Can somebody tell me what is the base SAS program that you can write to sort a data set?
Proxort.
We will write proxort. Data is equal to the existing data set, original data set name. Then out is equal to the new data set name. Then you will write by variable. Now semicolon run. This is the base SAS program that we write, right?
Yes.
Now, what I want to do, I want to create a macro for this one because, I told you in the last class, whenever you want to execute the same programming code again and again, instead of writing the same code again and again, what you can do now, we can apply the macro for that. If you apply the macro, so it is going to be very simple, easy. Then how we can apply the macro? We have seen in the last class. I told you first of all you should get the macro on the top and you should end with the percentage meant. And then what we should do, again keep a semicolon, go to the top, you should write the macro name. And within the parentheses, what we should write? We should write the parameter. I will tell you later what you mean by parameter. First, I want to have the first parameter. Say, for example, original dataset or ODS or old dataset, comma. The second parameter I want to have a new dataset, NBS, comma. I want to have a byvar. Now, what should I do now? Data is equal to, instead of ODS, what should I write? Instead of SAS plus, what should I write? I should write ampersand ODS. Instead of class 1, what we should do? We should write ampersand NDS. Instead of bisect, what we should write? Now we should write ampersand byvar. Okay. Now, if I execute the program, I told you a macro will be created, but not ready for usage. If you want to make it ready for usage, what I should do? You should one more time sort. Now execute the program. The macro will be created, and now it has been invoked. Now it's ready for usage. How to use the macro? No percentage sort. Open the parenthesis. First, you should add the first parameter value. I'm using first parameter for what purpose? Procs or data is equal to purpose. Now we should write, I want to sort SAS.class, comma. Now we should the second parameter value, which is NDS. I want to have it as a name class 2, comma. By which variable we want to sort it? Of course, we can have multiple variables. I want to sort by age, and within that I want to sort by sex also. Now, if I execute the program, now we are going to have a new data set. We are going to have a work library. In that, we are going to have a class 2 data set. In the class 2 data set, now the data has been sorted by age. Within the age, now can you see within the 11 years, female and male. Within the 12 years, female and male. That means the data has been sorted within the age by sex. These are the two important major applications. If you understand these two applications, now 80% you can write it here. If you want, you can write headline, head skip, or if you wanted the define statement, but you should write in a generic manner. Now, I understand your doubt, for one lesson we are going to have different variables. Proc report, data is equal to SAS.class. Okay. Then I'm writing the column statement. How many variables you want to have in the column statement? Or otherwise, simply I'm writing, say, for example, column statement, then I'm writing the run statement. So you want to write the define statement. Now we can write define how many variables you want to define. Now we can write all those here. Because we are going to define multiple variables, right? Now we are going to define in this way. Now, for example, I want to define 5 variables. Now I'm writing the define, but it should make sure that all the variables should have, every time we should have the same number of define statements. So tell me, how many changes you are going to make from one program to another program? One data set report, another data set report, data set name. We are going to have different types of column names, variable names, and we are going to different types of define statement. Now, how to download the macro for this one? Percentage macro. I want to have a report. One is for data set. Second one is for, let's say, for example, var 1, var 2, var 3, var 4, and var 5. And between the parameters, what we should have? We should have a commas like this one. What we should write? Proc report data is equal to what we should write? Ampersand PS. Because data set name. And the column statement, what should read? Ampersand var1, ampersand var2, ampersand var3, ampersand var4, and ampersand var5. Now, if you want to define that one, now again, what we should write? Ampersand var1. And first, whatever you want to define, you can write. Say, for example, I want to have so far only element center. I'm writing the element center. Again, what we can do? Again, ampersand var2. Okay. Again, I want to have in the center. Now we should define what I want to define now. Ampersand var3. Okay. Now again, I want to have element in the center. Now again, define ampersand var4. Now I want to have in the center. I'm writing in the center. Now again, ampersand var5. Now I want to have it in the center. Now again, finally, what we should write? Percentage amend
Report.
amend report. Now if I execute the program, yes, I'm going to have a macro. Now I want to use the macro for SAS self.class. Tell me, what should I do? Percentage report. Put the parentheses SAS self.class. What are the first variable that you want to have? I want to have name, comma sex, comma age, comma height, then comma weight. First of all, I execute the macro. Macro will be created and invoked. Then, if I use this one line, I'm going to have a report like this one. But now, if you want to print some other, again, what we should write? Percentage report. I want to have a SAS helper.cars. Then I want to have, make. I want to have model, and I want to have a type. I want to have an origin, and I want to have, invoice. Understand this one? Now, if I execute this one line, now we are going to get report for which data set now? Cars and these 5 variables.
So, మన options కి extra parameter create చేయొచ్చా sir?
If you want, you can create. You can create number of parameters.
Is there any limits sir for parameters?
No. But if you are every time you are using the same parameter, then no need to create a pattern. If you are using the same option again and again, say for example, if you want to have every time headline, you no need to create a parameter. Write it in the program. So every time the headline is going to get work.
Okay sir.
But once time you want to use center, one time you want to use left or right, and create a parameter for this one also, so that you can make the changes. Yes, Srikala. You have any doubt? Now, since we know a little bit of applications of macros, of course, in macros we have very few concepts, but the applications are manifold. The applications are manifold, and we'll see as much as possible real-time applications in the next 3-4 classes. Okay, and before going into that one, you should understand now what is macro, how we can define it. How we can define macro? A macro facility is a tool for extending and customizing SAS, and for reducing the amount of text you must enter to the common task. So whenever you want to perform the repetitive task, so instead of writing a repetitive programs, whenever writing a repetitive program, instead of writing the same program again and again. Yes.
So can you speak a little bit loud, sir? Your voice is
very slow.
Yes.
1 second, I will rejoin. Maybe. Now, am I audible now?
Yeah, no, perfect.
Yes, sir.
Are you there, Irfan?
Yes, sir.
Why you got the doubt?
Simply asking, sir.
You're not joining at 8 o'clock classes?
No, sir, not joining.
You started, no, Adam?
No, sir, most of the people's not joined, sir.
Adam's class.
Yes, sir.
We have completed 3-4 classes.
Adams, sir. CD's classes, sir. At what time, sir?
8 o'clock.
Evening.
Yeah.
Nobody informed, sir.
Do you guys have any phase issues? No?
No, sir.
సార్ ప్రీవియస్గా అంటే కోచింగ్ త్వరగా అయిపోవాలంటే 8 o'clock జాయిన్ అవ్వమన్నారు సార్, లేదంటే నార్మల్ 7 to 8 దాంట్లో అడ్వాన్స్ తర్వాత.
Chandrasekhar, did you attend SDM classes?
No, sir.
Then they're going to start again series classes from the start.
సో ఫ్రెష్గా ఉంటుంది అన్నారు మళ్ళీ బ్యాచ్.
Then they will inform you. Adam, something you should understand only when you have completed the stadium. First you should do stadium, then Adams. Okay. Now, whenever you want to do the repetitive program, whenever you require the same programming code again and again, instead of writing the same programming code, if you apply the macro, then what is going to happen? The size of the program is going to be get reduced. Whenever the size of the program has been getting reduced, then what is going to become? The code is going to become simplified. When the program is getting simplified, then there is a less and less chances of having typing errors and execution errors. Isn't it? Always the length of the program directly proportional to typing errors and execution errors. So if the length of the program is simple and short, there is a chance of less and less programming errors, so that applying the macros will simplify your code. Understand? No. And another important application. So whenever the macro facility enables us to assign a name to a character string and a group of SAS programming statements. Say, for example, I wanted 100 programs or 100 statements. This 100 statement, the same 100 statement, I want to write it 10 times. Now, what I'm going to do for all the 100 statements, what I'm going to do? I am going to create a macro variable. Simply, I'm going to write, I'm going to create a macro for this one. Now, whenever I want to have these 100 statements, no, I don't need to write 100 statements again. If I use the macro name, now this macro name in future will be get resolved as these 100 statements. So, as I said, your program is going to get simplified. Understand? So, whenever at the same macro name again in the next time, so it is going to represent these 100 statements. Okay? Now, how we can define now in a simple statement? So, macro is a stored code. Macro is a stored code, and you can say stored text. Can be set anywhere in the program. Anywhere in SAS program, and we can expand it. And you can also say macro code is a stored text that can be repeatedly that can be used repeatedly whenever we required repeated tasks. Repeat the same task again and again. So a macro is a stored text that can be set anywhere in the SAS program, and we can expand it, or a macro is a stored code that can be used repeatedly with the macro, whatever the macro name that we have given, with that macro name, we can use that macro code whenever we have the same repeated task. So this is how we can simply define a macro. Now, what are the uses of the macro? The first use of the macro is, the first important thing is it reduces the amount of code required. Amount of code required, as I said, for the repeated tasks, they're the most important application. And the second important thing is it minimizes typing errors and execution errors. And the third important thing is in the macros, we are going to have only one data type. That is a character data type. And the most important application is it simplifies the code. It simplifies the code. So these are some of the important applications or uses of macro. And 10. Whenever you install SAS software in our system, automatically, along with our base SAS, you will get the macro facility into the system. So when you take a SAS package, along with the SAS package, macros is going to be one of the important components. Whenever writing a program, first you need to check the macro facility is present or not in our system. How to check whether the macro facility is there or not? Sometimes when you write an error, the macro facility is going to get turned off in our system. This is very common in the Unix or Linux environment. When you're using a Unix or Linux operating system, sometimes the code is going to get crashed. As a result, the macro facility is going to get turned off. In this scenario, again, how we can turn it on? That is one of the very rare cases in the Windows. But if the macro has been turned off, first of all, we need to understand whether we have a macro facility on or not. If you want to know that one, we are going to a procedure called proc options. Remember, during the proc step, we discussed about the proc options procedure. Proc options procedure will let us know what are the global options that we have in our SAS system. So proc options, but if I write the proc options, is going to print all the options in the log window, but I want to know about only one option. Now I'm writing proc options, option is equal to macro. Now if I execute this code, if I have a macro facility has been turned on, now we are going to have a note in the log window, macro. It enables macro facility. That is the text that you are going to get in the log window. Now, can you see macro facility enables the macro facility. If you have like this one, that means the macro is in working condition. Sometimes if the session has been crashed, now you will get no macro. If you have no macro, you will not have any other choice. You have to close the session and you should reopen the session again. This is not so quite common in the Windows, but it is very common in the Linux or Unix operating system. Understand this one. And the next important, when you have a macro facility in our system, whenever you open the SAS session, in the backend, we are going to have two important components. Those are called macro components. Two important components. What are the two macro components that we are going to have? The first one is called as a macro language. And the second one is called as a macro processor. Macro language and a macro processor. And what do you mean by macro language? So far, when you're writing a macro code like this one, whatever the code that you're writing, and this is called a macro, we write this macro code in the macro language. So that means if you start with a percentage symbol, or if you're starting with ampersand symbol, that means that you're something right, a macro code, which means you're writing in a macro language. Understand? Once you have submitted the code, then what is this code is going to do? This, whatever the code that you submitted, that you have written in the macro language, now this code goes and communicates with the macro processor. So now the what this macro processor will do, the macro processor will convert your macro code into base SAS code. When you submit a macro code, as I said, the macro process is going to convert that into base SAS code. Now, you know that what is going to happen from the base SAS onwards, right? Now we are going to have a compilation phase, and then in the compilation phase, we are going to have input buffer, then the descriptor area and the PDV, and then the execution phase will take place. And once the program has been executed, we are going to have a result of the program. So that means when you submit a standard SAS program, SAS compiles and immediately executes it. But when you're submitting a macro code, what is going to happen? There is an extra step before SAS can compile and execute the program. Now this macro processor will convert that macro code into base SAS code. So the conversion of a macro code into base SAS code, that means we are writing a code in macro. Again, that code is getting written down into base SAS code. That means we are writing a program, that program is getting converted into another program, and this process we call it as a meta programming. So that means we are writing a macro code. Now the macro code again is going to get converted into base SAS code. And then the program is going to get compiled, then the program is going to get executed, and the whole process is called as a meta programming. Understand this one? No. The next important concept that we are going to have is macro triggers. What are the two important macro triggers that we have? So far you might have seen two different types of special characters. What are the special characters that we have seen in the macro so far? We have seen two special characters. One is a percentage symbol, another one is an ampersand. What it indicates? Percentage symbol always indicates the macro name, or it always indicates macro statements. What this ampersand symbol will do? Ampersand symbol will indicate all the time macro variables. So if you have anything percentage symbol, that is a macro name, or it might be a macro statement. But if you say anything with ampersand, starting with the ampersand symbol, that is a macro variable. We'll discuss about the macro statements later, and we'll discuss most important macro statements later. But in today's class, we are going to start discussing about macro variables. So in a program, how we can understand which is a macro variable? If you see something with the ampersand symbol, then you can say it is a macro variable. In macros, we are going to have two important types of variables. The first one is called as a name system-defined macro variables, and then we are going to have a name user-defined macro variable. By this time, you better understand what you mean by system-defined and what you mean by user-defined macro variables, isn't it? What do you mean by system-defined macro variables? These are the default. I told you when you open the SAS session, automatically the macro processor will be initiated, and the macro processor is going to create some macro variables when you open the system, and those macro variables are called system-defined macro variables. That means system automatically it will create whenever you open the session. That's why these are called default, and these are called system-defined, and the same system-defined macro variables are also called as an automatic macro variables. Automatic macro variables. So system-defined macro variables are also called as an automatic macro variables. And what are the system-defined macro variables or automatic macro variables that we have? If you want to see that macro variables, all the system-defined available macro variables. Now tell me, in the base SAS, if you want to see any variable value, or if you want to see an automatic variable, where we can see an automatic variable in the base SAS?
Log window.
Log window. But if you want to see in the log window, what is the statement you should write?
Put statement.
Put statement. In the same way,
Talk.
if you want to see any macro variable value, you can see in the log window. But if you want to see in the log window, you should write a statement called percentage put. In macros, we always start with a statement with percentage symbol. So percentage put. If you want to see automatic macro variables, now we should write an option called underscore automatic underscore. Now, if I execute this one line, what and all the system defined automatic macro variables that are available in SAS 9.4 in the current session, all those macro variables will be printed in the log window. So these are automatic or system defined macro variables that we have. If we carefully observe all these system defined macro variables, there is a similarity. You know what the similarity that we have? All these macro variables are starting with the keyword sys. The first three prefix sys. That's right. In future, when we're creating a user-defined our own macro variables, we never start with sys because SAS has taken this one for developmental purpose. So you should not create a user-defined macro variable by using a prefix called sys because they have taken for developmental purpose. And what are these macro variables and how to use this macro? What is the use of these macro variables? And we use very few macro variables in the real time. Say, for example, there is going to be a macro variable called, sys date. Somewhere we are going to have sys date here. Sys date 9 dot, sys date. We are going to have a sys time somewhere. We are going to have a sys version. Here we have a sys time, and we are going to have a sys version, sys error. These are the sum of the variables that we use. Now, how to use these macro variables? Say, for example, I want to print SAS help.class. Now I'm writing a proc print data is equal to SAS help.class. While I'm printing, I want to have something in the report. I'm writing a title now. I'm writing a title. Now I'm writing single inverted quotations, mind you. Now in the single inverted quotations, now I'm writing a title. Now this report is based on the data collected on. I want to have this report for today's date. Now I'm going to write, I have a macro variable called ampersand sysdate. Now I'm writing that ampersand sysdate. By the way, I told you, if you want to write a macro variable, you should always start a macro variable by ampersand symbol. And what's the macro variable name that we have? Ampersand sysdate. What this ampersand sysdate will do, this automatic macro variable will get my system date and it will resolve as an 20th of October 2022. Now I'm selecting this program, executing the program. I got that title, but can you see what is the information that I have? Ampersand sysdate. That means I'm not getting actual date value. Remember one thing, if you are using a macro variable within a quotation, the single quotation will not be get resolved. You should always write the double inverted commas. Then only the macro variables will be get resolved. So in one side, if I'm using a double quotation, so on the other side also I'm writing a double inverted quotations. Now, if I execute the program, now can you see what we have now? Now, ampersand sysdate has been resolved as an 20 October 22. But I'm getting only 2-digit here. If you want to get the 4-digit here, we have one more macro variable called ampersand sysdate 9 dot. Now, you don't require the dot, but if you want, you can also specify. Now, can you see what I'm getting now? I'm getting 20th of October 2022. Now, I want to have a time also. Now, I'm writing, at. We have one more macro variable called ampersand system. If I use ampersand system, it is going to pick my system time. Now I'm going to get the system time also. And I developed and executed this program by using which SAS version? SAS 9.4. If you want to get that one, we have one more macro variable on ampersand sys version. On I will write like this one. On, say for example, SAS like this one. Here, this ampersand sys version will be get resolved as in a 9.4. Now this is how I'm going to get it. So in this title, I'm using 3 macro variables. One is ampersand sysdate, one is ampersand system, one is ampersand sys version. Understand this one? This is how we can use a macro variable in the code in SAS program. But remember, you should always set a macro variable starting with the ampersand symbol. If you are using a macro variable within a title or anywhere within a quotation, the quotations must be in double quotes. Single quotes will not be get resolved. So now tell me one more time, if you want to check what are the system defined macro variables, if you want to check the list of all the system defined macro variables, what is the statement you should write?
Percentage put.
Percentage put, underscore, automatic, underscore. Understand this one, everybody? But as I said, we have very limited system defined macro variables, so not so useful. So then what we are going to do? We are going to create our own macro variables. If you are creating our own macro variable, then we call it as a user defined macro variables. Very, very important. I can tell you one important thing. When it comes to the interview point of view, we are going to get only the questions in the interview. What and all I'm going to discuss 15 to 20 questions of macro. If you could able to, if you are aware about those 15 questions and answers, you can easily clear your macros interview. So because the questions are going to be very, very repetitive. Okay. Now we can create these user-defined macro variables in 5 ways. Very, very. So the first question that you are going to get is how many ways we can create a user-defined macro variables? So the answer must be in 5 ways. And what are the 5 different ways that we can create a macro variable? The first one is called as an A. The first one is called as an A by using percentage let statement, and the second one is called as an A percentage global, and the third one is called as an A percentage. The third one is called as an A percentage local, and the fourth one is called as an A calls input, and the fifth one is called as an A into colon. We use a calls input to create a macro variables in data step, and we use into colon to create a macro variable in process scale, and the remaining 3 we can create globally. Very, very important. How many ways you can create a macro? Then they will ask you, what are the 5 ways? So you should say percentage let, percentage global, percentage local, calls input into colon. Then they will ask you how to create a macro variable in process scale. And you should say by using a clause called into colon. And how to create a macro variable in the data step. I'm sorry. And you should say by using a calls input concept. So in tomorrow's class, we'll see all the 5 ways of how to create a macro, user-defined macro variable. Clear, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See you in tomorrow's class.
Share the notes, sir.
Hello, sir. Hi, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, regarding the link, sir, for the classes, సార్ ఇది అంటే స్పెసిఫిక్ లింక్ అనేది అంటే టైంకి రావడం లేదు సార్ అంటే
I'm so sorry about that one.
2 లింక్స్ అట్లా
This is the management's decision. I don't get involved because I think they have issues with some of the students' fees dues. That's why what they're doing is like every time they're changing the link, I guess. It won't get stabilized in a couple of days. Yes.
సార్ లింక్స్ అనేది చేంజ్ అవడం వల్ల జాయిన్ అవ్వడానికి టైం
Yes, I know that this is confusing. This is so confusing, and then it will take some time. I can understand that.
Yes, sir. So better ఒకటి స్టాండర్డ్ లింక్ సెండ్
Sure.
చేసి
I'll have a word with them, and then they will.
ఓకే సార్ ఓకే సార్ థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్
Sure.
Share the notes.
Sure. But how should I say? I cannot share this in the Google Meet. Can we?
So in WhatsApp.
WhatsApp? Okay.
Yes, sir. In the WhatsApp group.
Okay, see you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
సార్
Yes.
అరేస్ చెప్పలేదు సార్.
చెప్తానండి, నేను డెఫినెట్గా చెప్తాను. మండే చెప్తాను మీరు.
ఓకే సార్, ఓకే సార్, ఓకే
సార్. అడ్వాన్స్ ఫస్ట్ 2 క్లాసెస్ సెండ్ చేయరా సార్?
నోట్స్
ఎస్ సార్.
I'll try. I don't know whether I have it or not. Definitely.
ఓకే సార్.